This is Lauren Watters with the EHS Today. Today we are at the SLC conference. I am standing along with Howard Mavity. He is a senior partner with Fisher & Phillips. And today you've had quite a few sessions. Why don't you go over some of the sessions that you've covered today?
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Andy, our intrepid photographer. The exciting thing about this conference is when we started it with EHS 3 years ago, we really did want to have the most useful and practical safety conference out there. And for me, a person who's handled over 500 workplace fatality cases, I really am intent on things that will prevent serious injuries as well as the more minor ones. The session I just finished, I was moderating on leading indicators. We had Steve Newell of ORC and also Barry Spurlock, a professor, former safety professional, and former lawyer. And we talked about trying to figure out what really drives safety, what prevents things from happening. Then you have to be able to quantify and measure it and incentivize those behaviors. And that sounds simple, but it's not. Right now, most people rely simply on how many injuries did I have, which are affected by luck and a lot of other things. So nice thing about the sessions in the conference is you've got people from academic, engineering, employment, legal backgrounds applying things in a very practical manner. Same with earlier today, we were talking about temporary employees and also contractors, particularly companies in the construction universe, but manufacturing too. A lot of their safety problems arise from the behavior of third parties on site. Everyone knows that, but actually coming up with a method to operate and maintain safety without intervening in their means and methods of work, which could turn you into your own, being their employer, is not so easy. And that's some of the content we've covered. In the construction breakout, we talked about what really makes a world-class safe company. And the truth is, every company has a safety culture. They may not know it, and it's either good or it's bad, but they have one. And this session talked about often, and this has been my experience, CEOs simply don't know that, as the gentleman from ORC put it, they're flying blind on safety. They'll say, Howard, safety's number one. I got good people to do that, but they really don't have any sort of business plan to achieve that sort of safety. And that's one of the reasons that we have so many problems, not negligence, not bad intent, pure ignorance. And so we talked about how do you get the culture you want. A lot of times when you use the word culture, CFOs, VPs, manufacturing types go, God, that's a soft subject. I can't quantify it, I can't measure it. But again, you got a culture. Like I said, it's either good or bad. And that's the exciting thing about these sessions. And honestly, for a guy who cleans up after the fact, it is exciting to me because I always have plenty of business. I'd be much happier if we can prevent some of the fatalities.
Great. That was some wonderful coverage. I saw both of those sessions. They were excellent. And I know that most recently you've been quoted on the Wall Street Journal as well as USA Today on the Ebola virus. Can you go into some detail on that?
Yeah, it's interesting that I'm now known as the Ebola lawyer. I'm not sure that's the moniker I want. But it's been interesting to me. I've served on task force ever since SAR, remember back about 10 years ago, that worry. And my main role has honestly been trying to keep people calm. Because when people panic and when those people are employers, they tend to make knee-jerk actions, and often those are unlawful actions. Now, I also have a concern societally because people can be hurt by those bad actions, and quite frankly, I have strong feelings we'll have to do something to help West Africa. I don't think we can just ignore it. But that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to keep employers on the straight and narrow. And generally speaking, if you want to comply with employment law in your decisions, you track the CDC guidance. And right now, the CDC guidance is focused on an individualized analysis of each person. Someone coming back from Nigeria or another non-affected country, you can't justify, nor should you go quarantine those individuals. And if you do so, it may be a violation of the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. Likewise, you can understand there's a different analysis when you have a healthcare worker who's been volunteering and now comes back from West Africa. And that's why you see a lot of debate yesterday and today. New York and New Jersey passed laws in essence demanding a quarantine. NIOSH, CDC, and the president responded saying, no, it's adequate to monitor their temperature regularly, again, based on what they were doing and so forth. And that's a hard call. I mean, if you're a healthcare provider, are you going to be comfortable bringing that person back monitoring their temperature and waiting until hopefully they don't convert till they convert. But by the same token, we don't want to discourage people. I think you'll see a lot of people in that setting opt for a paid, sort of voluntary 21-day leave. By contrast, if somebody comes back from visiting their family and they work in a manufacturer, say they came from Liberia, which actually is starting finally to make progress, and you go through that individualized assessment, you use the algorithm and questions of the CDC. You go through activities trying to find out were they really directly exposed. And if they're not, I would say they probably are safe to return to duty. I think it would probably be smart to monitor their temperature, have them monitor, and so forth. And then you get the weird questions. Somebody who says, you know, I got a fever, I feel badly, I was on a plane. Maybe it was the plane that the nurse flew from Dallas, Ohio. Now, it may sound goofy, but we've gotten that question. And you have a lot of people overreacting. So it's important to educate people. This is not an airborne disease. As I understand it, and I have to defer to the medical professionals, it's not airborne. It is not easily transmissible, and we have to inject some rationality. Stay tuned, because it is evolving and our knowledge is evolving. I think it's going to evolve into a more relaxed management instead of reactive model, but that's a key thing. One really has to stay on top of it.
Well, thank you for that educational tips on Ebola. And you heard it here first. This is the new Ebola lawyer, Howard. This is Lauren reporting from EHS today. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Lauren.